So let's get started here. I'm going to share my main screen. We're going to do the Dino here, and we're going to do the usual two pieces of Dino. The first piece we're going to do is we're going to talk about what happened this week, and then we're going to do a little psychology. So here's what's going on this week. It is hard to argue that the market hasn't come out of this last range that we were in. It's reasonably strong move, but there's some really significant artifacts here. 4 week highs from earlier in the month. There's a couple of those up there. There's lots of single prints everywhere. So again, this is what I mean. The ranges are really important. And right now, all we're doing is coming up to the top of the last recent push out of this giant range we're in. And so there's opportunity here because we're at a range extreme, and there was opportunity down here because we were in the range and we kind of broke out of it. So I think if you look at NQ, however, you can see why one of the reasons I like it so much, but it's been much more definitive in its movement. And even though the pattern is roughly the same, it's up here in nowhere land. It has broken out. In other words, we took out the recent high. So, it's just been really scalpable. There's still artifacts around, same story to the downside. But, this is basically this week, and it's been a reasonably strong move. Certainly given the economic and political situation, it's hard to argue that there is a bit under the market. It's hard to argue against that. Having said that, that doesn't just mean, you should be looking for buy the dips and, where to get long. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that, if you respect the ranges, there's some really good opportunities at the extremes. But in general, we're working our way up, and that could get really interesting. Let me switch my workspaces here real quick. And let's see, in order to do that, I don't want to mess up the video, so let me think what a quick way to do this will be. Yeah, give me 1 second here. Do this. Bring this one up. Give it a second to load. Okay. I have narrowed down my trading workspace dramatically. I'm not looking at structure at all when I'm trading these days. I'm just focused on price action and the order flow on the domes. And it's been really, really productive. But in order to bring up the thing I wanted to show you, I need to reload here, which I'm doing right now. So just give me a second. I meant to do this before the session started, so I apologize for not doing that. I was just I'm battling something. I finished moving and now have gotten sick after. Luckily, not while I was moving, but I think my body's just said, okay, time to take a break. So give me just a minute to get all this up here. And it's, what, if I stop the share, I think it'll load faster. I think Zoom slows it down. Yeah. So let's wait a second for that to come up. And meanwhile, the market is making new highs across the board, except in RTY, but RTY has been leading up. So, there's no way you can perceive that as anything but risk on right now, guys. When RTY leads, look at it this way. A couple of weeks ago, and this goes back to what Pete was asking me about too. A couple of weeks ago, the market got crushed because of SVB, and all of the small regional banks are in the Russell. So the Russell got crushed because of that. Well, the banking crisis for the moment is over. And so the Russell is coming back strongly. And, the Russell is the riskiest stuff. So when the riskiest stuff is leading us up, you have to respect that. It's that simple. And so, I'm not saying you just buy the dips, but, you want to be looking for opportunities to go with that long side energy. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. We're riding SD2 up, all day. And again, it's not just to get long at any cost, though, because we've had some pretty good pullbacks. So it's about, finding good places to scalp long and finding good places to scalp short. And, if you're a structural trader, you're looking for the structure to support that. It does. We've got price rejectors at the bottom of every period, and we've got UB at the top. So again, it's hard to argue with the market doesn't have a bid under it right now, again, from a weekly review point of view. Now, this is the weekly view apps that I've been running, and this is cool because we can see this week and last week. And this, again, is a way to just measure, where are we, how far we've gone. If you look at last week, where we are right now would have put us at SD4 of last week's volume. So, that is strong. And we are at SD2 of this week's volume. These are just standard deviations of the VWAP. So again, there's no logical way you could argue that there isn't strength in this market. But again, because of the volatility, you can't just trade this to the long side unless you are really getting good entries. And I submit to you, it's a much better opportunity to trade it both ways and just go with whatever's happening in the momentum, as we've been saying. Here's NQ, same story. It's at SD2 as well, and it's above SD4 from last week. So we're somewhere near SD5 at the moment. So again, there's a bit under this. There's just no way you can argue against that. And so, from the weekly recap point of view, it will be interesting to see if this has any legs next week. We cleared some important news items. Next week, we've got NFP coming. And, this is a really funny thing that it happens almost never. But again, next week, we will not have a Dino on Friday. But Friday is Good Friday, the 7th I'm talking about. And guess what? NFP comes out on Friday. And they won't delay it because it's a holiday. And so the banking is closed, the New York is closed, but the futures trade in a short session. So I'll tell you what, there will be nothing more fun than scalping on Friday when we get NFP in that thin speculative environment if you're a good scalper. It will be crazy. So anyway, again, there's no Dino. I'm going to try to do a live session for that, but I have to get healthy first. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Let's see, I do have a quick question, not related to Dino, but ledge setups. All right, tell you what, Alfredo, I'll take that at the end, assuming we have time, and I'm happy to do that. But let me stay on my weekly Dino review for the moment. And anyway, so that's kind of the picture here. And I don't think there's much else to say about that. I mean, you have to respect this. This is what I was talking about. RTY is up 1.8%. That's clearly a trend up. But everything else is below 1%, which, you hear me say all the time, that's a rounding error. A trend has to be at least 1% to have any strength. Well, we're not there in the other indexes. So, is RTY just correcting from the bank drop and there really isn't any bid under this? Could you argue that? Yeah, except looking at the VWAP and NQ and ES where I'm seeing that strength. So, those two are a little bit opposites. So again, we're going to just have to wait and see what happens. That's the fun of trading. Trade what happens. Don't try to predict the future. What else can I tell you from a Dino point of view? The internals have been really interesting this week. I've been watching the internals for the NASDAQ and the internals for the broader market recently, and I'm finding a really nice edge in that when I'm scalping NQ, an additional edge, I should say. It's a fine-tuning tool for fading ledge breaks. But the market opened very strong in advanced decline, plus 2,000, and we're sitting up here. We're not pulling back. But if you look at the tick, we opened with a crazy strong tick, and then we just flattened out. So net buying and selling right now is zero, but we're gap up from yesterday in most of the broader market equities. So what does that mean? That means there's something going on there that we don't understand, and we need to think for a minute. Oh, guess what day it is? It's the last day of the month. Surprise, surprise. So you know what? That burst of buying at the open might have been just some window dressing by the funds. You see this on the last couple of days of the month over and over again, particularly right now when fund managers are not making any money. So they are window dressing everything they can at every month close because, their bonuses are linked to it, their jobs are linked to it. And this is not a market where equity funds are making money. So, so that could easily explain that little blip in the internals at the open in the broader market. And again, those are just things can't trade off of them, but they're just really good to be aware of because it keeps your sense of what's happening focused and accurate. So let me do. I think that's it. I don't think I have much else to say from a Dino point of view here. So I'm going to close this workspace. And then, no, okay. And we'll let all this stuff reload. And now we're back here. Okay, I think I'm good to go from here. By the way, NQ traders, look where it just stopped, 1975. I talk about 20 all the time being an inflection point. We just made 20, and then we traded all the way back down to 07. So, Told you so. It's almost like the quarter numbers over in NQ. I'm finding really interesting patterns there now that I'm focused literally only on it. I'm trading nothing but MNQ and NQ these days. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the review of the week stuff there and switch into Dino mode for the psychology half of our program, unless anybody has any questions or comments about the week. And I'm going to go ahead and do Alfredo's question now. That way I can just talk psychology and for the second part, which is what the Dino stuff is really about. So one question not related to Dino, but ledge setups. For example, today, after the initial balance break at the top, and considering that the stats indicate being a two-side day is low, will it be more risky to target a ledge break down? Okay, here's a huge problem, Alfredo. What you're trying to do is you're trying to combine a price action setup, which is ledge break scalping, with the statistics of the initial balance, and you can't do that. They're both can happen, and you can lose money on both setups at the same time. Price action has to be pure. You have to treat price action all by itself. If there's something supportive of price action, that's fine. Let's say I'm scalping long, and there's UB at the top. That's cool. I would think, or it's we haven't broken yet, and we're heading up, and the initial balance high is coming up. Then the odds are in favor it's going to break, and that supports my long scalp. But I will never do what you just did and try to make a setup make sense combining a structural situation and a scalping situation, because they are often at odds. So when you say for ledge setups, if ledge setups are all about people getting caught offside suddenly. So when I'm scalping a ledge break short, and here would be a really good example. Let me I'll throw my dome back up, because we're kind of right there now. It's not likely to happen right now, but I'll show the example there. Okay, so real quickly, let's say, I wanted to scalp this ledge, and it's going up toward it, and we're trend up and all, whatever. I wouldn't just try to fade it here. What I want to do is I want to see whoever is already short, puke out or burp out or hairball out. So it's the sudden spike through here that I'm looking to fade, which will be up here somewhere. And so that's a price action setup based on people here being caught off sides. All right. Now, the fact that there's initial balance has broken, hasn't broken, there's UB, there isn't UB, has nothing to do with this setup. That's my setup. But if I flip open the structure and I say, oh, wow, there's UB up here, then that just supports the idea the ledge can break. But I'm actually fading it, and with UB, you probably would want to play long toward it. See, so you just can't combine the two. They're just two different pieces of information. But as a scalper, you have to focus on the price action. And that's the ledge break, and then the reaction to it, which is where you're going to try to fade it. So the whole idea of thinking, the statistics of a two-sided day on any given ledge break, the answer to your question is, Alfredo, is it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the ledge break. Yes, it might have some statistical significance, but to that price action event, it doesn't matter. Does that make sense? Do you understand my answer? We're right on schedule, so I don't mind taking a minute and talking about this. Okay, cool. So what about the current range? Will LRC a particular point of view? Well, again, I don't want to go into LRC shapes and all that. I do it every time I do a live session, so I'm gonna let that last part go. But I answered your question, and current ranges, that's a whole different conversation. I've been asked to do this, and I'm going to try to do it with the Scalpathon format as soon as I can get healthy enough and schedule it. Trading ranges is completely different. A ledge break is a very significant price action event because people always fade the high and they always get run over, and that's when you want to come in. When they're getting squeezed out and they're covering, you want to be selling to them, because then you've got a perfect short. And again, this is as a price action trader. What's going on in structure there really doesn't matter. Yes, it can help me game it a little tiny bit. If there's UB, that makes it more likely to blow the ledge and maybe a little farther, but it is really unusual that NQ will blow a ledge and just keep going forever. It ultimately pulls back. So the trick is, considering those factors when you're looking to fade ledge breaks. All right, we'll leave that at that, and let's go back and talk about the second half of the conversation. So today, I thought this would be a really good topic. This actually came up. Somebody asked me about this in another Dino session, and I did a little bit on it. I said, "Oh, that's a great question," and I talked to it for a couple of minutes. But I made a note when that happened that it would make a session all by itself, and so that's the topic, and that's why I chose to do it today. And the topic is care feeding of mentors, and that you have to start further back than that, which is even finding mentors. So in order to make this conversation make any sense, the first thing that we have to do, and this is a conversation I've had a lot of times. So, if it sounds like I've done this before, it's because I have. I just haven't done it that much with TRG. And it's a really important thing. So first of all, we need to define a couple of things. We need to distinguish between somebody that is providing education and a mentor. And a coach. There's three different words there, and they're all a little different. And this is really important. And this applies, by the way, to everything in business life and life, sports. This isn't just about trading, but in trading, it's particularly important for some reasons that I'm going to draw upon in a few minutes. Let's define the terms. Okay, a coach. A coach's job is to help you improve some element of your performance. And that's true, again, in sports and trading or whatever. So you can hire a coach to help you execute ledge breaks better. And, and that might entail a lot of different things, but that's a typical coaching job. Somebody doesn't do something as well as they want, and they want someone else to help them point out their flaws and, call them on their bullshit. That's what a coach's job is. A coach's job isn't to be your friend. It's to make you better. And sometimes the best coaches you'll run into are the people you'll love them and hate them at the same time, because, man, they'll rip you a new one when you need it, and you'll hate that. But boy, it will make you better. And in the long run, you will respect that. And so that's a coach. And now, by the way, all of these groups there can be intersections. A coach can be an educator can be a mentor, but they're different roles. So really important to understand the shades of difference and how you relate to the different things. A coach is a formal relationship. Somebody coaching you has agreed to coach you, and maybe they're getting compensated, maybe they're not. That is irrelevant, really. The same is true with all of these, except mentors. But so let's not talk about whether you pay them and that kind of thing. I'll cover that briefly at the end. But a coach's job is to help you improve one factor or a group of factors in your performance. So, frequently, in football, you'll see, the defensive coach or the defensive line coach. And, it can be very, very specific. People develop subject matter expertise, and, if they're good at communicating it, they can become good coaches. Okay, so that's a coach. A coach's job, help you improve one facet of performance. And here our ledge is maybe going to go here, those of you watching the market. Anyway, an educator's job is a little bit different. An educator could be a coach. If you were in high school and you had, typically the football coach was also, the history teacher or the English teacher. And, so they can be educators, and a coach can educate you. My first motocross racing coach and my first track and field coach, both of them, my track and field coach had been in the Olympics. So there was a lot of things about his life experience I could learn from just listening to him. So he could educate me. He could also mentor me, which I'll get to in a minute. But his primary job was to tell me, okay, Jeff, when you come out of the blocks, you're coming up too fast. You've got to stay in your crouch faster, farther out, because you're taking advantage of your small size. So don't try to come up to full height fast. Try to stay low and take advantage of the size. Okay, that's an example. Improve a facet of your relationship. But then he might also tell me, when I was in the Olympics, and he was, there was a guy that was 4 feet shorter than me, and he did that, and he beat me out of the blocks every time. So that's education, supporting a coaching role. Okay. Now, other types of education. Let's talk about trading for a minute. You can come in, you can take a class on how to read order flow. That's pure education. Somebody knows something that you don't, and you're there to learn from a subject matter expert. That's a very clear relationship. Like a coach, they know more than you do. Your job, and the reason you're in the class as a student, is to try to absorb what they're telling you. So your job is to be a sponge. And again, educators convey information. Coaches help you refine one element or group of elements that are related of your performance. So what do mentors do? What does a mentor do? I'm going to throw this out to the peanut gallery here for a minute and ask you guys to throw just, bullet point or a one sentence description of what a mentor does in the chat. I'd like to see some examples of what you think a mentor does. Share knowledge. That's an educator. Inspire. Okay. That's one thing they need to do. Mentors do a lot. Yeah. And lazy people write comments like that, David. What did I just do there, guys? I just mentored and coached David, who is somebody I'm mentoring right now and coaching, telling him that half-assed short answers that don't answer the question are a waste of time. And he's youthful, and that's a habit he needs to break. And he'll laugh and say, yep. Okay, mentors guide you. Yeah, mentors guide you, but so do road signs. Systematic growth and inspiration. Okay, help to change behavior. That's a good one, Alfredo. Coaches can do that too, but you're getting to the point that I'm looking for. Bob, look at your process and this issue of seeing the good and okay, Bob's on a good track here. A mentor can help you look at the thing you're trying to say here, Bob, is the big picture. I've had a lot of mentors in my life. And one of the mentors I had that I have to say significantly changed my life the most. I've never even told him this, and he's no longer alive. And at the time, I didn't really realize it. But here's a really good example. I was in business with my college roommate. We had a t-shirt business at UCLA. His father was one of the most prominent attorneys in Beverly Hills and was a partner in a big Beverly Hills prominent law firm. And just a real quick contextual information about this. When I started college, I wanted to be a doctor. As soon as I started competing with the other people in pre-med, I said, screw this. I'm not going to do this for 12 years. It just was crazy. So then I wanted to be a vet. And I found out it's harder to get into vet school than med school. So I said, all right, screw that. And if you come from a background like I do, you have to either plan to be a lawyer or a doctor or, something. That's was assumed. It was expected. So then I started thinking, all right, law. So I registered myself as pre-law, and then when my roommate and I met and he started this business, his dad's this prominent lawyer. So I asked him if he would, be a mentor to me. And I said, how did I do that? I called him up and very respectfully, I said, can I take you out for coffee or lunch at your convenience anytime? I know you're really busy, but I really want to learn about being a lawyer because I'm pre-law. And he said, absolutely, meet me at 6 a.m. tomorrow at this place for coffee. So, again, there's a real important lesson there. Mentors, you have to approach mentors that way. Mentors don't have to help you, and they don't benefit much from doing so. Most of the time, it's just frustration. So you have to approach it that way. They're doing you a favor. So anyway, he had coffee with me, and he already knew about our business and whatnot. He knew a little bit about me, and he said, you know what? You're wasting your time going to law school. He said, you've got a sense for business, and most good lawyers just end up in business anyway, advising businesses from the law point of view. And he said, that's really all I do. I don't practice law. I practice business from the law point of view. And he said, you can pay for that expertise. You can hire me or someone like me. He said, don't waste time. Skip the step. Stay in business. You've got a successful business already. What? And it was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. I changed my major to economics and Asian philosophy. I enjoyed the rest of college, and I made a bunch of money selling t-shirts. So the moral of the story is, and that's a good description of a mentor. A mentor is somebody that can help you understand the big picture, help you understand your bigger goals. What do you want from life? How might you get there? How might your approach be helpful or not? And in order to fill that role, that person has to have a lot of different characteristics. They have to be kind of a coach. They have to be pretty direct spoken, otherwise you'll never understand what they're trying to tell you, or they have to be reasonably extroverted to do it. And then they have to want to, there has to be something in it for them. And so, so many of you nailed this. You a bunch of good, to provide us with tools to better versions of yourself. Humility, really good comment. Guidance, support, and advice. They get you on the path and change you to what they see your potential could be. That's a good one, David. That's better. Maria, personal development. Exactly. And in a very broad way, helping you change behavior. Absolutely, Alfredo. And this is a really complex piece. If you think about it, a good mentor has to be a coach, an educator, and kind of a friend, but not really, because if they're too much of a friend, they can't really mentor you because you're on the same level. And a mentor, by definition, can't be on the same level. You have to respect and understand that they're in a completely different world than you are. So let me give you some other examples of these three things, and let me say a couple other things about it. The thing you should focus on buying is education. So of the three things, education is the thing you can look at. Okay, here's what they're teaching, and here's how much it costs. The return on investment for education is easy to understand. I need to learn order flow. The best person on the planet to learn order flow from is Lee Harris, and his class is X amount of money or X amount a month. And I'm going to learn how to read the market at any given moment. What's the auction doing? Okay, that's education. You have to understand when you're buying education that that's what you're buying, and that the person educating you has no contract with you to mentor you or coach you. If they happen to do that too, that's great. But you're buying education. And so the quality of the education is how you should rate an educator. And there's good educators and there's bad educators. There's a lot of educators that are good at teaching, but they're horrible coaches. There's people that are really good educators in trading that can't make any money themselves. I've seen this over and over again with people. Lee knows somebody that he's been in business with that's the situation. Has a huge following, but has never been profitable. And this isn't uncommon. I know a Forex lady like that. She's one of the most prominent Forex traders there is. And she hasn't been profitable, but what she teaches works. So understand that about education. It's a tricky spot. It's very hard to make any sort of money in education and trading, as it is in many things, because good people don't teach. It's those who can do, those who can't teach. Those who can't teach physical education, right? That's an old saying. And every now and then there's somebody comes along who can also teach and do something. And those are rare. And I think TRG is cool because we have a few examples of that here, of people that can do something well, and we can watch them do it well over and over again, but they also have an ability to explain it. And, trainers typically learn how to do that, people that have training backgrounds, but very, very often really good traders are horrible coaches and horrible mentors because they don't know how to explain things and they're not good with people. So this sets up a very interesting conundrum. Now that we've defined all the terms, to find mentors is really hard. And you can't always even go looking for mentors. Sometimes a mentor just comes into your life, but I've had a bunch of them and they've been really good. Some of them I made an organized effort to go talk to, like the lawyer. I'll give you another example. When I became interested in the stock market, I was about 10 or 11 when I really got interested in it. And I started asking my dad, who was a toy inventor and an executive at Mattel, nothing to do with the stock market. And he said, well, I can introduce you to my broker. And we have some family members that are traders on the New York Stock Exchange. And one of them is a specialist. And if you don't know what that is, Google it, New York Stock Exchange specialist. And you should talk to him. But I'm warning you right now, this is my dad talking to me. I'm warning you right now, he's a real asshole. And he doesn't really like kids and young people. So, if you can get through to this guy, he could teach you a lot, and I said, well, should I even try? He said, oh yeah. He's at the same time, he's a real character. He's really funny and, the best guy in the world to go out and have a cup of coffee or a beer with, but, he might be really abrasive with you. And so that's what my dad told me. So I wrote him a letter. And I said, this is me and this is what I do. And, I'm this age and I want to trade. And my dad explained who you are. And, if you have a moment, I would love to, hear from you. And anyway, he responded positively to it. He didn't write back. He called my dad and said, is this really your kid? And anyway, he became a mentor. And, I didn't pay him. We had no formal sit-down relationship type of thing. It just, I could call him every now and then, say, hey, this is going on. He'd say, oh, yeah, I've seen that 25,003 times. And here's what I think. That's a mentor. And it's really, really important in mentoring and also all of these things, but particularly in mentoring, to understand that, he ultimately told me, like 20 years later, he told me that this would have been fun mentoring me. But, he also said, but it's really been a waste of time too, So, and I would, when I was in New York City, I'd try to get him to go to dinner, and he would say, yeah, we can go to dinner, you're buying. And he'd name the place, and I'd end up on the hook for a $200 dinner, but I'd get 3 hours with him, or 2 hours with him. And so that's how you have to approach mentors, folks. Mentor doesn't need to help you. It probably makes their life worse if they do. They do get a psychic benefit out of it, but unless you approach it the right way, you're never going to get to that point with them. I don't mean to be obsequious and just, worship the ground they walk on. Don't be an idiot, but you still have to be respectful of what they've achieved. And so, a good example of this would be, when I've met people. I met Linda Rasky. I've told you guys about this. I've met her at a few different events, but, the first time I met her, I went up to her and just said, I've respected your career. I know who you are. And, this is what I do. And, just a real pleasure to finally meet you and see you. And that's it. Just, you can't push farther than that. Then the second time I met her, I was like, oh, hi again. And, we met once. She said, oh yeah, I remember you. And she said something and that, confirmed that. And that was cool. And then I started talking about, this, I've mentioned this a few times, hey, what do you tell people about when they're wrong? Should they just get flat, or should they try to work their way out of the trade? And we had a fun conversation about that. And, she's not a mentor of mine. She's an acquaintance. I barely know her. She probably doesn't remember my name. But, by a respectful approach, I have gotten something from that relationship. To me, I consider it, she's mentored me a little bit, even though we don't have a formal mentoring relationship. So those are some shades of difference among the three things. But I think this is so important. You buy education. You can buy coaching. If there's a good fit, that can be really powerful, because the coach's job is to make you better. And then mentors, if you see someone that you think, God, I'd love to be mentored by that person, think about, how should I approach that? How can I make it even interesting for them to want to do it? And if they do mentor me and I become really successful, is there a way I can recognize them for that? And I used to always ask mentors that. Sometimes you get a funny answer, like the specialist in New York would say, yeah, you can leave me alone, kid, that kind of thing. But other people, I've gotten really good feedback from that, that it was a rewarding relationship for them, and here's why. And that's good. And so now, as I've gotten older, it's become, I'm an educator in TRG. I mentor people now and then. I am a coach. I do get paid to coach people. And now, I kind of see all the different relationships I had and all the ways that they affected my success and failure, and how the person accomplished that. If I look at my track coach in high school, this person was probably the person that changed my life the most across the board, just in terms of how I approached life. And he did it in such a subtle way, I couldn't even give you an example. Every time you were around this guy, you wanted to be better at everything you did. And he didn't yell at us. He didn't, an example once was the school tried to fire him, and 500 parents showed up to protest him getting fired. And my father, who was a good public speaker, stood up at this meeting and said, I don't know about you guys, but anybody that can get 500 of our kids out running around in their underwear in the rain down to the beach and back, I think that's a pretty special guy. And my dad sat down, and everybody in the room just went silent. And that's a truly good way to describe it. That's what he could do. He could motivate 500 people to run to the beach and back in not their underwear, but running shorts. My dad spoke that way, and it was just a really visual about, this guy really can inspire. So anyway, let's see. We're right on. I try to do this Dino session in 2 15-minute chunks. 15-minute session on what the market did and what's going on, and then this 15 minutes of psychology. And this topic we could talk about forever. We did a little conversation around it the last time, when it came up. So, if you have questions or comments, or if you want me to elaborate, or if anyone wants to share anything about their coaching or education or mentoring experiences, I think this is something that really helps to wrap your brain around. And I think the most important part of that, just to summarize, and then I'll take questions and comments, is to understand that these are three different roles. They're completely different. They sometimes overlap, but an educator, they're a subject matter expert. Their job is to give you information. A mentor's job is to inspire you and to help you see the big picture and to call you on your bullshit. And most mentor relationships aren't paid, but you have to understand that there has to be some other way you make the mentor's life better. And your entire existence with a mentor is to make their life easier, because then the time they spend with you is helping you, not dealing with any logistics of dealing with you. And so that's critical. And that's also true of coaching. If you make a coach's life easier, they can coach you better. So do the assignments they give you and answer questions honestly, and that kind of thing. A lot of people kind of will hire mentors and coaches, or hire coaches, or have a relationship with mentors, and they're constantly challenging. And this has happened to me. And this is the number one pet peeve as a mentor and a coach that you can have. And it's also an educator pet peeve, where somebody that doesn't have the credentials to be in the room with you challenges you on something. This is the number one thing that is annoying. So as an educator, when you're teaching something and somebody tells you it's wrong or they don't agree with you, and they're not of the level of education in that topic to even question it. And this happened with people I've mentored before, and I have stopped mentoring them because of it. That one individual in particular, the further along I got with this individual, the more she challenged what I was teaching her. Like, she became an expert all of a sudden. Like, I would say, okay, here's how you trade a ledge. And I would get these questions, but what if it does this? Well, it doesn't do that. It's doing this. It would be like all of a sudden that person thinks that they have enough knowledge to challenge the mentor, to challenge the coach. And I cannot emphasize this strongly enough. That is the fastest way to ruin a relationship with somebody who's helping you, to think you know enough to challenge them. I'm not saying don't call them on stuff or don't challenge them when it's appropriate, but you cannot challenge their level of knowledge. If you do, then you either shouldn't be getting education from them, or there's something wrong with your ability to learn and your style of learning. And it's almost always the latter there. I've seen this several times. People get to a point and they blow themselves up because they just can't accept that relationship where student is a sponge and teacher is a fire hose. You have to be prepared for that and accept that. If you can't, don't bother spending money on education because you're wasting your time. That's the pet peeve. Okay, let's see what we have in comments. Every trader story is different. Can copying an edger style work in this game? Oh, Jeffrey, that is such a good question. And the answer is no and yes. But really, really friggin' good question. One of the best questions we've had recently. The answer is this: you can't copy another trader. Everybody that tries that, it just doesn't work. That's why trading rooms are a waste of time. But, I have been in hundreds of trading rooms. I have worked with thousands of traders, both as a student and as a teacher. And you can get nuggets of information from somebody else doing something that can help you execute it. You're always going to have it be a little bit more your own. But you should fight very hard against trying to take something that you're being taught and immediately change it. If the person teaching it is making it work and there's evidence of that, like, for example, my scalping or Lee's, where you're seeing our profitability, okay, then anything you can learn from that can help you get there. But you should really avoid the common scenario where people say, oh, well, I've got everything working. I just need a momentum indicator to go with my MACD and then I'll be a good trader. And so they look at what I'm doing and they think an LRC is a momentum indicator and they add that. That's what you want to avoid. If a trader is making it work with 3 elements, don't take those 3 elements and try to plug them into yours. Really understand what they're doing. And yes, I think that can be valuable, but I've almost never seen anybody just copy one style and run with it forever. I've seen adaptations done. But I really caution you against trying to adapt too early until you know what you're doing, if that makes any sense at all. Great question. Let's see, Bar. Cool. All right. Awesome. Thank you for that. Let's see, David. The mentee has to cut out forward.
Put forward.
What is that?
Put forward. put forward.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is absolutely. Everything you say here, David, is absolutely right. One of the things that I was always good at right away, because I kind of started young, looking for mentors and coaches. But, if you find somebody, look, there's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous that is pertinent to this conversation, that when people go to meetings that are drunks and they want to try to get sober, they tell those people, look for somebody at the meeting who has something that you want. Stability in their life, or a fancy house, or the hot girlfriend, whatever it is that being sober is helping them do. Look for that. And you want what they have. So that gives you something to focus on right away. And so if you look at what does my mentor have that I want, and how can I make it easier for them to communicate that, and how can I compensate them? Again, if it's a paid coaching relationship, you are compensating them that way. But still, good coaches and mentors need psychic compensation. And for me, it comes seeing traders succeed. That's the number one thing. But if anybody's disrespectful along the way, or doesn't understand that I can make what I'm charging them for a month in 5 minutes in the market, that this is really a waste of my time otherwise, so I really want to see them improve, that's important. And because some people think, just because you've agreed to coach them for an hour for whatever amount of money, that it's their time. No. You've bought that time, but you're buying that person's expertise, their subject matter expertness. So don't come into that with cocky, I'm paying for you to tell me something that I want to hear. You have to understand that person's job is not to do that. Their job as a coach or an educator is to tell you what's correct. And so many people come in, and we see this in TRG all the time. People come in, they buy a membership, they stick around for a while, and then they tell us that you're teaching this or that, and that's not true. Lee and I, we get this constantly. The way that you explain imbalances isn't right. But your way is. Again, education is information. Do with it as you see fit. But if you're buying information to argue with it, then you have an issue with your learning. And we see this so often. It's really common in the trading space. And, remember, the trading space attracts a lot of weird people. I'm one of them. We're all one of them, right? And those people tend to push boundaries. That's just a definition of weird people. But that's also why we tend to succeed, because we go places that other people don't, or we're more tenacious at sticking with things that aren't working, et cetera, et cetera. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah, I'm coaching David right now. And one of the things he's seen over and over again, I've seen this with him over and over again, is that stuff that I explained to him in the workshop in 2019, that he's heard 45,000 times since then, sometimes just now is making sense, because that layer, he heard it before, but that layer is fitting into the puzzle that he's assembled in his head. It's a piece of the puzzle. And that's what learning trading is like. There's lots of backwards and forwards. There's lots of, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. It happens over and over again. And you have to stay focused on the right things. And that's where, coaches and mentors can help you a lot, is keeping you focused on, what to worry about. Like, worry about a good process. Don't worry about whether you're profitable or not. If you have a good process, it will lead to profitability. That's something one of my mentors said to me. In fact, that specialist, he's the guy that said that. He said, it doesn't work the other way around, Jeff. You don't get profitable and then have a process. You have to have a process in the market, and that will lead you to profits. He said, I do it. I have a process. I also have a license to print money. This is literally what he said to me, which a specialist does. A specialist can legally front run the market, because that's their job. Their job is to maintain an orderly market in an equity. And so, they can buy from you, raise the price, and then sell. And so, it's a really interesting job. But again, there were so many things I could learn just from listening to the guy. I could, take him out to dinner and just not open my mouth, which brings up another thing. When you are working with a mentor, emphasize keeping your mouth shut and asking questions and listening. Don't tell them how much you know. They'll figure that out all by themselves. The more you're talking, the less valuable a mentor or an educator is. And I see this a lot. People, want me to coach them, and then they spend an hour telling me what they're doing, and, in questions I didn't ask. And, No, you're not looking for a coach or a mentor. You're looking for somebody that tells you to tell you what you're doing is right, and you're not. It's not right, and I'm not going to tell you that. So I'm not a good guy for you. That's a big red flag. Okay, let's see. Awesome, Jeffrey. Yeah, that was a really good question. For example, let me give you an example to your question, Jeffrey, about can one trader copy another? Can Lee do what I do? Yes. Lee can trade the way I do. I don't think he can do it as well as I can, but I think he can do it. He can look at the order flow and scalp the way I do. Can I trade structurally the way Lee does? Sure. I can see the opportunities. I understand the statistics. It doesn't suit my personality, but could I do it? Yes. Okay, so can we copy each other? Yes, we can. But what's happened instead is I've learned enough about structure from Lee that it's improved my price action scalping. And I don't know if Lee would say the same about his scalping, but the point is, if you have the right learning mode in your brain, then somebody who is good at something can teach you something. But I almost never see one trader just copying the way another works and making money. If you want to read a bunch of interesting books about this, there were some traders in the I think it was the early 80s, the turtle traders, where this was exactly the experiment. A firm hired a bunch of people to do a style of trading, turtle trading, and these weren't traders. They hired people and said, here's how you do this as an experiment to see if you could just teach. And you can do your own research about how the turtle traders did, but it's a classic story in the world of trading and teaching trading. Let's see. Cool, David. Sometimes with a mentor, you need to develop yourself and educate yourself for that mentor to be able to help you. Oh, that's critically true. Yeah, I've had mentors say that to me many, many times. In fact, that's probably the most common thing I've ever heard when I approached somebody that I was trying to get to mentor me, is that you're not ready for me to mentor you. And I didn't understand it at the time, or if I did, I thought they were just being an asshole. But then in hindsight, I look back and I say, wow, he was right. Guess what? The guy who knows everything or a lot more than I do about a subject was right about that subject. Our egos can so get in the way with this subject. So, always understand this. When you're approaching somebody for any type of improvement, is this a coach? Is this a mentor? Or is this an educator? Are you buying education? Are you hiring them to help you improve something that you don't do well? Or, is this somebody that can give you big, global guidance and, maybe call you on your bullshit every now and then? That's really important. And often it's all three are in the same body. But understand there's a distinction. This is the last thing I want to say. So this is an interesting story. I had a friend. All right, let me set this up a little better than this. This is the last anecdote. I was a co-founder of a software company in the early 80s, and our financial backers had a successful software distribution business, and they were using the profits from that to fund us. And their accountant was a guy named Larry, and I met Larry at their firm. We were a subsidiary of theirs, of the distributor, and so we were a separate company. But we'd go to their events and whatnot. And I met this guy, at a Christmas party. Larry. Hi, Larry. I'm Jeff. I'm the national sales manager at Monogram. I'm Larry. I'm a soft sales accountant. Oh, cool. Hey, I need an accountant. Do you do individuals? Yeah, I do entrepreneurial individuals. I said, that's me. Perfect. I've got my stock in the company, and so I made an appointment to see him, and he became my accountant. And whenever I saw him in his office, he charged me $1 million an hour, and helped me do my taxes if I needed it, and whatever else. Okay. So one day, I saw him for a tax thing. And then, and one other detail here, he owned a building in Santa Monica, and I rented an office from him in that building, a personal office. So I knew him that way too. So anyway, one time I'm in the office building and he's walking by, and I said, oh, Larry, do you have a couple of minutes sometime? I just want to run something by you. And he said, sure. He said, there was a conference room in our building. He said, I'm going out to lunch, but when I get back, I'll have a few minutes. You want to just, meet in the conference room for, you can run it by me there. I was like, cool. All right. So he comes back from lunch. I meet him in the conference room. We talked for like 5 minutes, and I just ran something very global by him. And then we went on our way. A couple of weeks later, I got a bill. And it was his normal hourly rate for a quarter of an hour for these 5 minutes. And I was like, huh? And I was really taken aback. And I had approached this meeting with him as a mentor, but that obviously wasn't clear in our relationship. And he was my accountant. And so I called him on it. I went and saw him and I said, this bill, I don't get this. He said, this comes up a lot. He said, when I give business advice, I always charge for it. I don't care what it is, because as an accountant, that's what I do for a living. So, you wouldn't ask me to do that and not pay me. And he said, sometimes I'll, waive charges and whatnot. And in this case, I will. He did. But he said, you have to understand, that's what I do. I get paid to do that. And that was a big wake-up call, because I realized that, a mentor who's a professional in a certain space, they're going to expect to be paid for mentoring. Whereas like with the lawyer, I was buying him a cup of coffee and I wasn't hiring him as a lawyer. And so, I would have been really surprised if he charged me for that meeting. But this is something that later on I've come to respect, that Larry did that, because people don't understand that when I help them, even for free, on Messenger, or whatever, that this is something I charge for. And so if I do it for free, I'm kind of doing you a favor. And so that was an interesting wake-up call for me when that happened. I realized that, on the other hand, if I was asking Larry for advice about, Ferrari mechanics, I wouldn't expect him to charge me. But he deemed that a big picture global, entrepreneurial question was within his purview as my accountant. And so that there's an important lesson there. Okay. Let's see. The quieter I become, the more I can hear. That is so true. That is so true. All right. So that's the topic. Are there any other questions or comments? I hope that was helpful. I think that's a helpful thing in any area of expertise, but particularly in ours, because, good traders typically have quirky personalities. And, if somebody's willing to help you and they're good at something, then you really need to respect that. And the same thing with educators. When you're buying education, your business shouldn't be arguing with the educator. They present their material and you take it or leave it. But debating with them whether it's true or not is a total waste of time. And it just stuns me that people do that. But they do, Okay, cool. Thank you for the feedback, Robert, Maria. I appreciate it. Any other questions, comments, burning desires before we wrap up? We ran a little long, but I think this topic warranted it. Try to say that fast 3 times with a stuffy nose. All right, we're good. Thank you, everybody. Next session's the close. Today's close is going to be crazy. I'm going to do a real quick screen share just to tease that, because this is what's going on here. We continue to have we're not trend up at the moment. We've been trend up and at SD2 most of the day. We're now on a little bit of a pullback, but there's some strength. We're still holding above the value area, and so the close could get interesting. Given that here, let me put up the one with the VWAP on it. You can see the VWAP right now is at 01, and we're trading 16, so we're not that far away from it. RTH VWAP's a little higher up. This is Globex VWAP, but this is an interesting day. Remember, Friday short squeezes are common, so this close could be interesting. It could be a setup to get a short squeeze. I keep an eye on the indexes. RTY's pulled back a bit. Now it's only up 1.5, and NQ is up 1 now, though. So it's joined the trending party. So it'd be interesting to see if the others, come on board as well. One thing that was noteworthy earlier, Microsoft was the only big tech that was really down, and Microsoft has turned green. And those of you that were coached this morning, we talked about that. Watch out for that. That's the sign that we're probably going to have a little more upside. And we saw that all morning when the internals opened strong, and they've actually continued the strength. So at the moment, we're not strong, though. So that's what I was saying. We're in a little bit of a pullback. So the close could, anyway, the moral of the story is the close could be very interesting. So join us. All right. Thank you, Todd.
See you there.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everybody. JVC, we'll see you then.